Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Keith Silva. We're here today at the UVM Horticultural Research and Education Center in South Burlington. This is where cutting-edge research takes place on apples, grapes, and grain, just not in the winter. For farmers, winter isn't a time to kick back and take it easy. It's a time to learn and prepare for the upcoming growing season. During this downtime, farmers attend conferences and workshops like the UVM Hops Conference happening this Thursday. More on that later. First, let's head a few miles down the road to the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies in Burlington, where I learned about a new way to teach farmers that's virtually out of this world. Every so often, our camera captures what's best described as a surprise.
So you can just turn around, it's right behind you.
Oh my God. Oh, wow.
Yep, that's me, wearing the goofy-looking goggles and laughing like a fool.
Oh, wow.
My excuse is that this is my first time experiencing virtual reality, or VR. My guides are Shannon Mitchell and Marguerite Dibble of Game Theory, a video game development company in Burlington.
VR is basically a way to take a screen and put it right up close so it fully encompasses your sort of ocular view, and it makes it feel like you are immersed in a game environment.
The first thing you'll notice is this cool headband. It's attached to the goggles, so it actually has two lenses here, one for each of your eyes, and it offsets it a little bit. So what each eye is seeing is a little bit different, which gives you that 3D effect. And then we have headphones too, so you can hear it, and it's really cool.
The real game that Dibble and Mitchell have created for this virtual environment teaches farmers how to scout for pests and plant diseases found in hop yards. The two were game for this idea after receiving an email.
We got a random email from someone at the University of Vermont who said, we kind of want to make a game about training farmers. We kind of think maybe it should be in VR. Is that something you could maybe help with? And we said, yes, we could totally help with that. We'd be very excited to help with that.
The random email Dibble received came from UVM Extension agronomist Heather Darby.
My sister works in the school system, and she was being trained on virtual reality technology to be used in the education system. And she immediately came home and said, Heather, you know, this would be really great for farmers. And immediately I thought, wow, you know, yeah, this would be a great tool to be able to teach farmers different practices in an environment that looks real, maybe feels real, but isn't.
The game works like this. A player travels through a hop yard, and when they spot a leaf that doesn't look quite right, they can pull it down using a controller and examine it from front to back to identify what they're seeing.
We're keeping score here.
We are keeping score because that's so important. You can't really get better unless you know how you've done. You don't know what you don't know. So going through it'll tell you what you're really good at identifying and what you miss out on, which is really good for reflection and seeing how you can improve. I wouldn't call it winning. The real winning is learning.
For most of us, a game that simulates pest and disease identification doesn't sound like a lot of fun. But Darby and Dibble both saw the potential audience and situation for this project as a perfect fit.
Farmers work best by doing, and we know that. So they don't really respond that well to sitting in a classroom, watching a PowerPoint, taking notes. Farmers like to be outside. They like to learn by doing. So in the wintertime, when they have the opportunity to learn, we can't be doing. My whole thought process was, can we teach farmers how to scout for insect pests, as an example, through virtual reality technology and environments so that they really feel like they're doing?
I grew up in Vermont. I have a lot of friends who are farmers, and they are the busiest people alive. But they're also super curious people. They want to learn, they want to grow, and that's one of the reasons why I thought this project was a good fit for our type of solutions, is because it's a way to create that environment and create a game around it that's actually solving a challenge, right? People don't have time as much time as they would like to go out into hops yards and learn in the summer. So we'll make a hops yard you can go around and learn in the winter.
Scroll up to flip it.
As much as the players will learn by doing, the same was true for the developers.
I didn't know very much about hops plants. And so what we did is we went with our artists and we went there and we scouted for bugs and we got to see Japanese beetles up close and look for them. And before that, we were kind of struggling a little bit to capture them and get them to look the right way because you can't get the same kind of detail until you've seen it. So I got much closer with bugs and pests of all types during this process. Definite learning process from both sides.
Right now, the game is still a prototype. Game Theory and Darby want to expand to different platforms so it can be played on laptops and mobile phones. And there are also plans to develop similar games to deal with animal husbandry and soil science. Darby hopes this project will inspire other innovators in the fields of game design and agronomy.
It's exciting to get something out the door and hopefully inspire other extension folks around the country to start using similar technology to train farmers in any number of areas. Part of being innovative and cutting edge and staying in a market or adapting to a market is just understanding that you constantly have to be looking forward.
In the game world or in the real world, learning always wins.
If you'd like to try out the virtual hops yard for yourself, Game Theory will be at the UVM Extension Hops Conference this Thursday, February 21st. The conference is being held at the Doubletree in South Burlington and runs from 9 until 4. For more details, visit the website on your screen and follow the links. Our next story is about planting in harmony with nature. Going native has become a trend in the last few years, with gardeners looking to improve their landscape using native plants. Let's join Leonard Perry in the studio with Claudia West, the author of Planting in a Post-Wild World.
Why plants are important to us and our future, and how we can have a positive impact on nature and plant in tune with nature are subjects of the book Planting in a Post-Wild World. Hi, I'm Leonard Perry with the University of Vermont. I'm fortunate today to have the author of this book with us, Claudia West. Thanks so much, Claudia, for being with us.
Such an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
And I guess the first question I have is the title of the book. It says Post-Wild World. What is that?
Yeah, so in post-wild, we don't mean that wildness is gone. Every weed that comes up in your garden tells you that wildness will always be there. It's a natural resource. What we mean is the fact that about 25 years from now, 75% of all people will live in cities. We have very few spaces left in nature on the planet where deep and rejuvenating plant communities grow that balance the effects we as a civilization have on the planet. So wildness doesn't exist that much in nature anymore, which is why it is so important for us to bring it back into our gardens, because quite honestly, this is where large parts of our future nature will be at home and will live, right there in our front yards, maybe even our container plantings on top of terraces.
And it can be as simple as having plants that provide insects for the birds or pollinators,
Absolutely.
is this right?
Yeah, so that's a really, really important point. Plants are the foundation of life. They produce much of the oxygen we all breathe in, and ecological plants are the foundation for insects that eat them, and then birds who come in later to eat the insects. So for us it is extremely important to bring these plants back to make sure our planet and we as a species have a bright future ahead of us. Plants should never be replaced by mulch long term. You should always have a dense, thick carpet of species, maybe one on top of the other, in your garden to provide not only incredible beauty, but also plant a salad bar for insects and a sponge garden that soaks up the rain and puts the water right back where it needs to be, back in the ground to rejuvenate or replenish our groundwater.
And I think, by choosing the right ground cover plants that cover the ground, that's going to keep the light from getting to the ground, which is going to keep those weed seeds from germinating. Is that?
You're absolutely right. Plants, again, are the best mulch on earth, and they are so good at suppressing some of the weeds that we constantly battle in our gardens.
Well, I know in your book, too, you have some pictures of layers. And I assume this is the one layer, and what's above that?
Yeah, so you can almost think about it like a lasagna or like a layered cake, where you have ground covers at the bottom and then show your species right on top of that. That creates spectacular flower natural moments and your emotional moments in your garden. That's that second layer. And then on top of that, we usually use either trees, shrubs, or tall perennials to build the framework or backbone of your planting. So we have 3 key layers: structural, theme plants and ground covers that make the garden of the future, that has that incredible beauty and wildlife value.
So I think, looking at one of these, it looks like you have just a few of those structural plants that you put in first maybe.
Yes.
And then a lot of that color, right, for the different seasons of color, and then finish it off with all that ground cover.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah. So that's exactly right. And we want to make sure that all of these 3 layers, plants are balanced in this. So we don't have too many structural plants unless you're creating a screen, right? So you don't want to see your neighbor or some kind of infrastructure. Then you can use a large number of structural plants. But normally, to make the garden incredibly legible and beautiful, we try not to use more than 10% of structural species.
So that's
in
a great
design.
tip. I know there's many others in your book. What are a couple other tips people might find in your book?
So plant more plants is probably the key ingredient of the gardens of the future. Make sure that mulch doesn't replace your plants. You should only really use it at the beginning of a planting temporarily, but then aim for covering soil densely with ecological plants that have all of these great benefits. In order to do this, it's really helpful to use smaller container sizes. It's much more difficult to plant dense ground cover with 3 gallons, but maybe quartz or landscape plugs could be the solution, or even seed if you want to play with that. And then, when you plant these gardens, it's important to think about plants not only as pretty ornaments, but understand that if they have ecological value, meaning if insects eat the leaves or if insects drink the nectar in the flowers, you can bring all that beautiful life right down in your, terrace or in your front yard garden and increase your gardening experience even more.
Well, great, Claudia. Thanks so much for a few minutes today sharing some of these. I really look forward to really getting in depth and reading these in your book.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for watching. I'm Leonard Perry with the University of Vermont.
As we say goodbye, I want to thank my colleague Rebecca Gollin for helping me out today. And as always, thank you for stopping by Across the Fence.